So over the last few weeks, Claudebot, now renamed OpenClaw, really grabbed the media's attention. It moved from this open source experiment to headlines linking it to the broader SaaS sell-off in the market. So trying to make sense of it all, I went to one of my go-to resources in the AI space, and that's Claire Vaux from How I AI. She has great videos that are what I think are grounded in reality, very helpful to learn from, and forward-thinking. And she has a video that's walking through how she set up OpenClaw for a use case around being an executive assistant, which I found super helpful, especially how she was thinking about the security and the permissions that maybe someone that's not technical like myself or someone who hasn't been part of an IT organization would really know. So I'm going to walk through that. I built a slide and I'll share kind of my biggest takeaways and walk through that specific use case. All right, let's jump into it. Claire starts with isolation from the very beginning. She uses a dedicated, mostly empty laptop and recommends ideally a burner phone instead of using her personal or work devices. On the laptop, OpenClaw runs under a separate OS user with no personal or work files. For messaging, she decided to use Telegram, and largely because she doesn't use it for anything else, which keeps this workflow completely isolated from the rest of her digital life. She also locks down Telegram so that only her specific Telegram account can talk to the bot. Like the biggest takeaway here is pretty simple. It's just isolate early. Hardware, operating systems, and messaging channels all become boundaries that limit damage if something goes wrong. The core use case was checking her calendar and scheduling meetings, and you can see that on the far right of the diagram. But Claire was very clear she didn't want to give OpenClaw full access to her email or calendar. So instead of letting the bot log in as her, she created a whole new separate Google Workspace account just for the agent. And then she named it Polly. So Polly gets its own email and calendar. And from there, Claire shares her calendar with Polly using OAuth, granting read-only access. Polly can see availability, but it can't edit or delete anything on Claire's calendar. Write access is limited to Polly's own calendar and email. She then sets up a dedicated 1Password vault that only contains the credentials that Polly needs, like its Google Workspace, and I think there is an Anthropic API key. So none of Claire's personal or work passwords live there. The biggest takeaways here is really controlling access pathways. The agent can only see what it needs to see, and it can only act where it's explicitly allowed. The final takeaway is really about identity separation. Claire was very intentional about keeping her identity separate from the AI agent, so Polly isn't able to impersonate her if it decides to go off the rails. Okay, so putting it all together, in practice, this workflow looks like this. Claire messages Polly on Telegram to schedule a meeting. OpenClaw logs into its own Google Workspace using credentials from 1Password, uses its read-only access to Claire's calendar to find an opening, creates an event on its own calendar, and then sends Claire an invite to accept it. So there's no full calendar access, there's no impersonation, and there's clear boundaries throughout. So that's Claire's setup for this one use case, and the principles we really took away when setting up your own AI agents is number 1, isolate your environment, 2, tightly control those permissions, and number 3, keep your identity separate. I highly recommend adding Claire and her YouTube channel, How I AI, to your arsenal of knowledge, and I'll link her stuff down below.